I think this is where I think there's a real, failure of imagination and coming up with a narrative, especially for a left of center progressive government. I think many people, if you had a new government say to them, look, we really want to have a much better health system. We want to increase our health spending substantially, not just to pay doctors a decent wage, but to buy more machines and so on. In order for that to happen, we're going to ask everybody to pay 1% more in income tax, or maybe 2% more in income tax, or maybe that will be specifically allocated to health spending. I think that would be actually a very popular policy, because for most people, an extra 1 or 2%, if you, on the other hand, you say to the rich people, we're going to get you to pay an extra 10%, then that'll be popular with the voters who don't pay it. Yeah. But they'll reorganize their affairs in such a way that you won't really raise a lot of money.
I think what people will say is, show me where you're spending the money that you already get. Where's that going?
Yeah.
Because it feels to me like the messaging has always been the NHS needs more money, and it seems to get worse. You know, the quality of the service has dropped.
Yeah.
The total spend has gone up. Now, maybe in inflation-adjusted terms, not so much. And I know COVID put a lot of pressure, but I think there's very little accountability on where the money's going.
Actually, that is a great point, and that is, I think, a chicken and egg problem which you've pinpointed, and which relates to what I was talking about earlier about fiscal rules, which sounds sort of very abstract and theoretical and so on, but actually is a good way of thinking about it. I think the possibly the worst defect of having these fiscal rules which say we have a very strict limit on the borrowing that we can do in the short term, in the next few years, is that it makes it impossible to answer the question. Because the way, in my view, the sensible way to answer that question would be to say, okay, yes, right, we will spend the next 2 years or 3 years really improving the health service by spending more money. If we improve it, and by borrowing more money, if we improve it sufficiently, we'll then turn around to you as a taxpayer and say, hey, look, now we've improved it, we've eliminated the waiting lists and so on. This is what we're asking you to pay 1 or 2% in extra income tax.
That sounds good.
And I think people might
build it
buy
first.
into that.
Like if they improve the train, if they put the internet on the trains,
that's right.
And then they said you've got to pay an extra 10p to get on the train. Now I pay it.
Yeah.
Because I sit on those trains with no internet. Or do you know what I mean? Like
that's a good point.
I do think, look what we've done.
Yeah,
it's cost money, and we've borrowed to do it. But this is the fiscal rule thing, and this is where I want to end.
Yep.
Your whole take is really that we're stuck politically in the system of old. We need to evolve, and the one thing that the UK should do is abandon its fiscal rules and probably borrow some money and invest in infrastructure and investment.
Yeah. Well, so they should they should invest in infrastructure, but again of a kind that will start delivering results immediately or soon, not pie in the sky about we're going to build an airport in 10 years' time.
Good internet. Give good internet connections to the
provide
whole
good
country.
Internet.
Yeah.
You make the railways run better.
Cheaper and faster.
There are some, I think you should, there are some road building programs where, and they were actually all ready to go. They were about to be built. The first thing the Labour government did, you may remember, was they announced in the first week, there were about 350 million, it's not a huge amount, of various programs, road building, the extension of Northern Rail and so on, which the Tories said were ready to go, and they said, we're going to stop that. Now, these are all things that would have happened. They would already be under construction now, and they would be delivering results in 3 years' time. Instead, they've stopped all the short-term investment and said, we'll do it. So investment is one thing. But I think also the concept of investment is, in a sense, overrated in this respect, in that there are a lot of things that you can spend money on which are not investment, which actually are more important for improving the productivity and the long-term potential of the economy. And so, for example, education, education is clearly an investment, and is clearly an investment that will ultimately generate both economic growth and government revenues in the future in a way that actually building hospitals doesn't. Building hospitals generates costs. I mean, it may improve health. So they should be spending more money even on current spending, so-called day-to-day spending. The distinction between investment and day-to-day spending is drawn in the wrong place. What it should be is a distinction between spending that will actually make the economy more efficient in an identifiable way and create more revenues, and spending that is sort of nice to have. So yes, they should be spending more on that. They should be doing more to make, and this goes back to your earlier, doing more to basically make life in the country tangibly and evidently better. And then I think they could come back and say, and we need to pay money for that. We can't just put it on the never forever. We can do it for a few years. Now we've delivered some results, and we need to raise some money from taxpayers. And I think that would be a deal that the nation could buy into.
This was a clip from our chat with economist Anatole Kaletsky about what's going on in the global economy. To watch the full episode, click right here.